Okay, welcome back to Shannon's Plants Planting Time. Today I'm going to do something a little different. Normally around this time of the week I try to do a care video on a particular plant, and instead today we are going to talk about generalized houseplant care. So anyway, now we're talking about indoor plants here, and some of the stuff I say might vary slightly depending on what zone you live in or your household conditions and stuff like that. But I am just going to talk in general about the care that we give the kind of plants that we are bringing in our house, which are mostly, like tropical in nature, and, a lot of aeroids, some calathea, Hoya, ficus, some alocasia, orchids. I don't know if I said orchids yet. Anyway, you get the picture. You know what I'm talking about. The kind of house plants that we are buying either at Lowe's or Home Depot or at the specialty shops or on Etsy. So, the first thing I want to talk about is light. Now, plants need light to photosynthesize. And without being able to photosynthesize, they will not live. So now you have your low light plants, you have your medium light plants, and you have your high light plants. And it normally says on the tag in the little plant what kind of light your plant needs. However, I've found that a lot of them are wrong, and a lot of them list a plant to be low light tolerant or medium to low light tolerant, when in actuality I get home and do some research, because I still look up every single plant I bring home in multiple different places so that I can gather a consensus of what it needs. So I hope that makes sense. But anyway, light. I have found that most plants, like in my house, like bright and direct light. Now there are some exceptions to that. The calathea and the prayer plant family and those kind of plants like more medium low light, and it says that the snake plant at the store, and I'm looking over here, my snake plant isn't there anymore. The snake plant and the ZZ are low light plants, but I found if you give them bright and direct light, they grow a lot better. So I have mine in a medium light situation, but no plant is going to grow with no light, so you need to keep that in mind. But as a general rule of thumb, I would say that most plants like bright and direct light, and not direct light, because direct light burns a lot of the plants that we have in our house, their leaves, because they are not used to being outside in the sun, and so they do not appreciate that direct light on their leaves. So, as far as watering goes, I have also found this to be true, that most plants like to dry out between waterings. Now, there are the exceptions. the calathea, the African violet. Well, even it likes to dry out. The calathea come to mind, and I'm sure there's plenty of others. But you should always do your research, like I said. But no plant likes soggy, wet feet. All plants appreciate a well-draining mixture so that the water can pass through and it doesn't stand and puddle and collect and rot the roots. So water, you don't want to give them wet feet. And along those lines, no plant appreciates overwatering. And overwatering does not mean always how much water you give a plant, but it can also mean the frequency. Sorry, my neighbor just did something. It can also mean the frequency with which you water the plant. If you water it a little bit every day, you can also overwater it. And I lost a lot of plants to overwatering. And I can tell you that a plant will come back from underwatering way easier and faster than it will from overwatering. So, watering, yes. Most plants like to dry out at least slightly between waterings. Most like to dry out a lot between waterings. Temperature. Pretty much with all of my houseplants, if I'm happy, they're happy. Now I know that there are some plants that come from the what is that, the clouds in the mountains, the cloudy part of the mountain up in elevation, and those plants appreciate a cooler temperature. Well, I don't have any of those plants because you're talking about special collector's plants. But I would hope you would know that if you were getting into one of those plants. But pretty much with my plants, as long as I'm happy, they're happy. So I would say an average temperature of 70 to 80 degrees during the day, Fahrenheit, and maybe down to 60 to 65 at night. So, yeah, as long as I'm happy, they're pretty much happy. We kind of touched on soil when we touched on watering, but like I said, because no plant likes to have soggy feet, all plants appreciate soil amendments to help the water drain. And most people use perlite for this. And that's fine, but even plants who like to be on the moist side, like this calathea, rattlesnake calathea, it still has a good amount of perlite in its soil. I don't think you can see it. To help the water pass through, because like I said, no plant wants that water just sitting in there on those roots, rotting them away. So although calathea like to be moist, they don't like to be wet. So yes, most plants prefer some sort of soil amendments to make the water pass through more freely. And I did a video on my go-to soil. especially for aeroids. So, especially aeroids don't like soil that is compact and not free draining. So, they like a lot of amendments, and the perlite that comes in the bag is just not enough. At the very least, you should be adding extra perlite to your soil mixture. As far as humidity goes, now this is where it gets kind of tricky. I'd say the common houseplant is comfortable at the common humidity level in your house, whatever that may be, because they're used to it. However, when you start getting into plants like let's just take these two Anthurium regal, or Alocasia regal shield, and an Anthurium vitterifolium. You're talking about, when you start getting into these kind of plants, you need a humidifier, and you start to need to up your humidity because these plants prefer a higher humidity level. Also, again, the Calathea prefer a higher humidity level. But anyway, the Calathea really enjoyed the higher humidity, and so do some other plants. So I think it's best, if you're going to be a plant collector, to get a humidifier. And my goal is to keep this room between 60 and 70% humidity. And I find that generally, through the plants that I have in my plant room, they are happy at that humidity level. Now, there are some that I have in little terrariums. I don't have a massive terrarium. I would like to get one. But I do have some plants in little terrariums who like a lot more humidity. And one of those is my Photonia nerve plant. And it is absolutely busting out of the little terrarium that I got it. It just loves it in there. And I'm going to be getting a crystallinum, and since I'm starting to get into the more collectors type plants, I'm going to be looking for an IKEA greenhouse cabinet so I can keep that humidity even higher. But it is really easy in this room to keep the humidity high because the glass door is still in, and this room is blocked off from the rest of the house, and it has no central heating or air. I can shut that door and turn on both of my humidifiers, and it will be 80% in here, the whole room, before I can turn around good. So, yeah. But anyway, that's humidity. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is fertilization. Now, everybody says fertilize once a month, fertilize twice a month, fertilize every other watering. I think it depends on what you're fertilizing with. And at first I was fertilizing with Miracle Grow, and I think I just followed the instructions on there, and they say don't fertilize in the winter. Well, I say this is entirely left to you, because if your plants are actively growing and they don't know that it's winter, then I would continue to fertilize them. But I have switched my fertilization regimen to these two things right here: Super Thrive and Liquidirt. And I use both of these every time I water. Every single time I water, I use a combination of these. So, that is just how I do it. My plants are happy. The Liquidirt boasts that it does not burn foliage or roots, and I believe them. And the Super Thrive is not a fertilization program, but actually an enhancement regimen. So you can watch my video on my fertilization regimen. What am I feeding this giant red Congo Rojo? So yes, fertilization. I think you need to tweak that to your liking. But anyway, instead of talking about that was mommy, instead of talking about a particular plant today, I just wanted to go over some general rules of thumb to follow when taking care. Sorry about that. The neighbors are going in and out and it's driving them crazy. And anyway, I just wanted to talk about some general rules of thumb when taking care of houseplants. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you, just generally looking at your houseplant care. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down depending on what you think of this content. And I know that this video doesn't apply to everybody, especially if you're a serious collector with all kinds of crazy specimens, but I'm talking to the average collector here. So anyway, I hope to see you in the next houseplant video. Bye!